A 41-year-old man came home to his favorite pasta dinner and his wife in his bed, totally unaware that in less than 24 hours he would have exactly $237 to his name and absolutely no legal way to fight back.
Time is gone.
She built another reality for herself.
You were left.
It's honestly the ultimate nightmare scenario, and I think the scariest part is just how entirely invisible the setup was.
Right. So today we are doing a deep dive into a leaked confidential dossier. And, just to be clear about what we're looking at here, this isn't some collection of rumors. We actually have our hands on a complete forensic accountant's timeline.
Yeah, and it's bundled with unsealed family court filings, which is huge.
Exactly. So we're going to treat this paperwork exactly like a crime scene because, well, that's what it is. We are talking about a 14-month methodical financial assassination of man named Mark H. in Portland, Oregon, and the operative who carried out this hit, his wife of 6 years, Elena.
The precision of it is just chilling. I mean, there were no shattered plates, right?
Yeah.
No screaming matches in the driveway, literally no obvious warning signs that his entire reality was about to detonate.
None. The dossier actually notes that Elena was affectionate and tearful the night before, blaming work stress for her emotions. She cooked his favorite meal. She initiated intimacy. But wait until you hear what she did next.
Yeah, and let's just set the ground rules for today's deep dive right now. We aren't here to use fancy academic words. We aren't throwing around clinical terms or playing armchair doctor.
No, not at all.
We are here to walk you through the anatomy of a financial hit job so you can learn to spot these manipulation traps before they snap shut on you. This is about raw street-level tactics. We're looking at the actual mechanics of a takedown.
Okay, so let's unpack this by starting at the very end.
Yeah.
The day the trap snapped shut. Because to understand how flawlessly this operation was executed, you really need to see the devastation it caused before we rewind the tapes.
Right. The aftermath is brutal.
So picture this. It's a Tuesday afternoon in March 2023. Mark walks through his front door. He's thinking about a software architecture job, what's in the fridge. Just a totally normal Tuesday. But waiting for him, taped to the kitchen's granite island, is a notarized letter from an attorney.
And it's not just any letter.
No, it's a marital property separation agreement, citing Oregon Revised Statutes 108.070.
And by the time Mark actually reads the first paragraph of that paper, the ghosting is already complete. Elena has packed 2 suitcases into a rental car, and she's gone.
Vanished. And she took his entire financial infrastructure with her, like the joint accounts, drained and closed. The joint credit cards, canceled.
Yeah, her half of the home equity had already been legally moved to a separate trust.
Which is insane. So Mark tries to go out and buy dinner that very night, just hours after reading a letter, right?
Yeah.
And his card is declined at a fast food drive-thru. He checks his banking app on his phone. $237 left. That is it.
Wow.
Everything else is locked behind a legal firewall.
It is a total systemic shutdown of his life, and it's executed in a matter of hours.
Wait, hold on, though.
Yeah.
I have to challenge the premise here. Because banks have fraud departments.
Yeah.
Judges read evidence. You can't just spreadsheet your way to stealing a house. How did the legal system fail that badly to verify her claims? I mean, doesn't a judge need to hear both sides before turning off a man's access to his own life savings?
Well, that is the exact assumption that gets people ruined. You think the legal system is this slow, careful machine that always seeks the truth, right?
Right. I think most people assume that.
But Elena bypassed the slow machine by using an emergency mechanism. She didn't file for a standard divorce. That takes months, and it requires both parties to disclose everything. Instead, she spent 6 months building a premeditated operation to trigger a unilateral property division.
Okay, so walk us through the actual mechanics of that. Because how does one person just divide the property without the other person even being in the room?
So half a year before that Tuesday, Elena sat down with a divorce attorney. She needed a way to sever the assets without Mark having a chance to contest it or, freeze the accounts.
Right.
Under Oregon law, and similar laws exist in a lot of other states, you can secure an emergency separation of assets if you can demonstrate a history of financial abuse.
Financial abuse.
Yeah.
But wait, Mark was pulling down a software architect's salary and providing for the entire household?
Yeah.
How do you prove financial abuse when you're living comfortably in the suburbs?
You manufacture the evidence, that's how. She started building a paper trail anchored by a meticulous spreadsheet. She basically quantified her entire existence in the marriage as unpaid labor. She tracked her emotional labor and her domestic management hours.
Honestly, if I started invoicing my partner an hourly rate for, like, remembering we were out of paper towels or picking a restaurant for date night, I'd be laughed out of the house.
Oh.
That sounds like a bad internet joke.
It sounds totally absurd until you attach it to a sworn affidavit and hand it to a judge. But the spreadsheet was really just the foundation. She then provided the court with falsified context for Mark's everyday behavior.
What do you mean, like normal stuff?
Exactly. Like if Mark asked to review the monthly credit card statements, or if you wanted to discuss their budget for an upcoming vacation, she documented those conversations as controlling behavior and financial restriction. She painted this whole picture for the legal system of a woman completely trapped, whose husband scrutinized every dime to keep her entirely dependent.
Okay, filing fake abuse records to steal assets isn't just some loophole. That is an absolute trash move by a coward who weaponized a system designed for real victims. I mean, there are people out there genuinely trapped by abusers who desperately need those emergency off-ramps just to survive. To use that protective machinery as a strategy to rob your husband blind is despicable.
From an ethical standpoint, it's entirely reprehensible. But from a tactical standpoint, it was devastatingly effective. The court saw the spreadsheets, read the claims of overbearing financial control, and they granted the emergency separation.
Unbelievable.
And Mark wasn't notified until it was already done. That notarized letter on the kitchen island was just the final step.
But to get to that point, she had to maneuver a ton of money around without him noticing. Which brings us to how she slowly dismantled his awareness. Let's look at the escalation of the threat. She didn't just do this overnight.
No, not at all.
It started back in September 2022 with a tax optimization move.
This is where we see the groundwork really being laid. Elena approached Mark and suggested moving $45,000 from her joint savings into a brand new high-yield account that was strictly in her name.
45 grand. I mean, I think anyone listening to this would immediately throw up a red flag if their partner asked to move that kind of cash into a solo account. How do you even sell that to a smart guy?
Well, you wrap a financial trap in an emotional blanket. She didn't demand the money. She framed it as an act of service. She told him, you worry too much about money. You're always stressed about the tax burden on our savings. Let me handle this. Let me take this off your shoulders.
Oh, wow. So if you are listening right now, just think about how many times you've let your partner handle a confusing tax form or a weird bank transfer or an insurance claim simply because you didn't want the headache.
Exactly. That is exactly the vulnerability she targeted. And Mark agreed because he wanted to be the easygoing partner. He didn't want to hover over the bank accounts and say no to his wife, who was ostensibly just trying to manage their taxes more efficiently.
Right. He doesn't want to be the bad guy.
Yeah. And with that one conversation, he willingly handed over a massive chunk of their liquidity.
So she secures the cash. The next step is cutting off his access to credit. We're moving to November 2022 now, and this is where the deception becomes incredibly active. The P.O. box maneuver.
Yeah, this one is wild. She claims she lost her credit card while running errands, which, it's a totally normal occurrence. But instead of just clicking replace card on the banking app, she actually calls the credit card company. She requests a replacement, but she has the bank mail it to a P.O. box she had secretly opened a week prior.
And here's the mechanism of how she locked him out, because I was reading this and wondering, how do you just revoke a joint card? It turns out it wasn't actually a joint account. Elena was the primary account holder, and Mark was just an authorized user. They had treated it like a joint card for years, but legally, she held the keys.
That distinction is so crucial. While she has the bank representative on the phone, she revokes Mark's authorized user status. 2 days later, Mark is at a gas station and his card declines.
So he comes home, says, hey, the card isn't working. And what does she do? She blames a bank error. She tells him they must have canceled all the cards attached to the account when she reported hers lost. She says she'll spend the time calling the bank to sort it out. Don't worry about it, honey.
It is brilliant, dark misdirection. She is setting up her financial lifeboats while actively poking holes in the marital ship. And what you really need to notice here is the pacing.
The timeline.
Right. 2 months passed between the $45,000 transfer and the credit card manipulation. She is slowly bringing the water to a boil. Mark thinks he's dealing with minor administrative glitches. He has no idea his financial arteries are being surgically tied off.
Which brings us to January 2023. The strike is only 2 months away at this point. The cash is secured. His credit is severed. Now she needs a place to hide the rest of the loot once the legal trigger is pulled. So she sets up a ghost company, a single-member LLC.
But look at how she structures it. She incorporates the LLC using her maiden name, and she uses her parents' address for the business registration. Literally nothing traces back to the marital home in Portland.
See, I would notice if my spouse suddenly registered a business in her maiden name at her parents' house, he had to have asked about this, right?
Oh, he did. And her cover story was perfectly calibrated. She told him it was just a side hustle for some freelance consulting she wanted to try. She framed the maiden name and the parents' address as a way to keep things simple for her own taxes, completely separate from his main income.
But the LLC never did any consulting, did it?
Not a single hour. That LLC was a designated landing pad. When she finally filed that ex parte separation agreement 2 months later, she liquidated their joint investment portfolios.
And the money went straight into the business.
Exactly. The proceeds from those sales didn't go into her personal checking account where Mark's lawyers might easily track and freeze them. They were funneled straight into that LLC. It was an asset shelter, established before the separation, operating under a different name at a different address.
Unbelievable. So we're at the final countdown now, February 2023. Just weeks before she vanishes, she deploys the final tactic to ensure Mark stays completely in the dark, the boundary wall.
Up until this point, she had used excuses, right? Taxes, bank errors, side hustles. But now she needed absolute silence. She instituted a hard rule regarding anything to do with their finances, claiming she needed boundaries.
Boundaries. God, that word is thrown around so much today as a cure-all for literally any relationship discomfort. So if Mark asked about the savings account or wondered when the new credit cards were arriving in the mail, she would literally walk out of the room.
Yep.
She refused to engage, claiming he was violating her boundary.
This is preemptive isolation. She wasn't actually asking for emotional space. She was sealing the communication channels. By creating this ironclad boundary, she ensured Mark wouldn't stumble across a mismatched bank statement or realize the investments were moving.
Right.
Most importantly, she made sure that when she finally dropped the hammer on that Tuesday in March, Mark wouldn't have the funds, the credit, or even the basic information required to put a lawyer on retainer.
He was financially gagged and blindfolded. But, you know, this is the part of the dossier that messes with my head the absolute most. You might be listening to this right now, maybe driving your car or cooking dinner and thinking, come on, why didn't Mark just put his foot down? Why hand over 45 grand? Why accept the silent treatment over your own money?
Well, he didn't fight back because of the mental handcuffs she placed on him long before she touched the money. She didn't just manipulate his bank accounts. She conditioned his reality. Let's break down the street-level tactics that kept him so compliant. First, you have the price trap.
Right. The dossier shows that Elena never attacked Mark during these setup phases. Instead, she constantly fed him lines like, "You are so trusting," and "You're not like those other men who are so controlling with their wives' spending."
She built a pedestal of the perfect, modern, supportive husband and put him right on top of it. And the only way he could stay on that pedestal was by unquestioning compliance. If he demanded to see the LLC registration or if he pushed back on the credit card issue, he would instantly tumble off.
He would become the exact controlling man she praised him for not being.
Exactly. But the dossier highlights something even darker. Elena didn't just leverage his desire to be a good guy, she literally weaponized his own past.
Yeah, this part is rough.
Mark had shared a deep vulnerability with her early in their relationship. Growing up, his mother had been entirely financially dependent on his father. His dad controlled every penny, and Mark watched his mother shrink under that dynamic, and he hated it.
It was his core wound. He had deep empathy for anyone who felt financially trapped.
And Elena took that empathy and turned it into a blade. When she started making these money grabs, the separate account, the LLC, she didn't frame it as her securing assets. She framed it as her healing from patriarchy.
Oh, man.
She told him she needed these separate accounts to feel safe so she wouldn't end up trapped like his mother.
She basically dared him to oppose her. She strapped a bomb to his own moral compass. If he questioned her, he wasn't just being financially prudent. He was betraying his own values. He was becoming his father. That is some next-level psychological warfare.
It really is. It is the weaponization of a good conscience. Mark's greatest vulnerability wasn't his lack of financial literacy. It was his desire to be a good person. He desperately wanted to be the opposite of the financial abuser she ultimately accused him of being in court.
Wow.
And in his desperate effort to prove his trust and support, he just handed her the tools for his own destruction.
So what is the aftermath? What does life actually look like for Mark after the Tuesday strike?
The reality of the settlement is brutal. Because Elena successfully filed that ex parte separation with sworn claims of financial abuse, the court viewed her as a victim needing immediate protection. She argued that being tied to the marital home's debt threatened her financial independence and recovery.
Let me guess how the court solved that.
Mark lost the house.
Of course.
The court awarded her a disproportionate share of the assets based on that falsified documentation. Today, Mark lives in a rented studio apartment. He is paying child support for a son he only gets to see every other weekend.
That is just...
His savings were wiped out, his equity was transferred into her trust, and he is functionally starting over from below zero at 41 years old.
While she walks away with the house, the liquidated investments funneled through her LLC, the $45,000 in cash, and her public image completely spotless. I mean, to the outside world, to her friends and family, she is the brave survivor who finally escaped a controlling, abusive husband.
Which really brings us to the core lesson of this entire dossier. You have to stop believing that love and the law operate in the same universe. They do not speak the same language.
We all want to think the legal system is a shield, you know? We think that if we are good people, if we do the right things and treat our partners well, the system will naturally protect us.
That is a dangerous illusion. The law is not a shield of morality. It is a piece of machinery. It is an intricate set of levers and pulleys. And in the hands of a skilled operator, in the hands of someone willing to meticulously document, distort, and manipulate, it cuts sharper than a knife. You are living in a society where victimhood can be and is weaponized. Elena didn't need to yell. She didn't need to threaten him with a weapon. She just needed to wait. She waited, she documented, and she exploited a system designed to protect the vulnerable, completely turning it into an offensive weapon.
It is terrifying to realize that your entire life can be dismantled on a spreadsheet while you are eating dinner. But there is one final piece to this puzzle that makes this uniquely a modern nightmare. Think about the digitization of our money.
Oh, absolutely.
20 or 30 years ago, if your partner was siphoning off $45,000 or opening secret credit cards, there was a physical paper trail. A bank statement would show up in the mail. You might find a weird receipt in the trash or a new card in a coat pocket. You could literally hold the evidence of your own ruin in your hands.
But today, the paper trail doesn't exist.
Exactly. It's totally invisible. A new account is just a push notification she can swipe away while you're watching a movie together on the couch. An LLC registration is just a PDF sitting in a hidden folder on a smartphone. The mechanics of financial ghosting are easier, faster, and more silent than they have ever been in human history.
Your boundaries, your financial literacy, your willingness to ask the hard questions, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it challenges the narrative of who you think you are in the relationship, that is your only real defense. You cannot let empathy blind you to the mechanics of your own life.
Check her phone tonight, because the next story we tell might be yours.